What's up? What's up, folks? We are back for another episode of the Art of Advocacy. I'm gonna play a little something real quick here. This is what we'll be talking about today. My special guest is Mr. Cory McCarthy. And this is what we'll be talking about today.
Stepping down. It's an announcement that came more than 2 months after we learned DPRO shared a racist meme with others in the city, referencing the N-word numerous times. And it was also more than a week after we learned of a leaked recording of DPRO and Devaney joking about accusations of racism, with Devaney telling DPRO to bring one of his, quote, dark friends, end quote, to an upcoming event. And in the days since, two high-profile Massachusetts figures spoke on the issue here on Greater Boston and Boston Public Radio.
People like that should not be serving in office. It's quite simple. If he doesn't have the decency to know he should step down, then he should be made to step down.
This is going to be a telltale moment. What do you want to be? What do you want to be remembered as?
But the now former city councilor DPRO doesn't think this should end with him, saying in a statement yesterday, quote, "I take full responsibility for my actions and encourage others who participated in this hurtful and sensitive banter to also do the right thing and step down from their positions in city government." I'm joined by the Chief Equity Officer for Everett Public Schools, Cory McCarthy, and Stephanie Everett, the Boston Globe reporter who published the details of the leaked recording and has been following the accusations in Everett closely over the last several months. Welcome to both of you. I want to start with you, Cory McCarthy. Who is he speaking about, and can we expect more resignations and more accusations to come to light over the next few days or weeks?
No, I'd be remiss to not mention, thank you to GBH for having me. Thank you for the members of GBH for really speaking out and giving folks the platform to speak out. Thank you to Ms. Ebert on the call as well. Thank you to the Leader Harold and Paula Ceriti as well for really pushing these issues in Everett to the forefront. I think it's very clear, right? Morally corrupt politicians. There is a direct link between them and crimes against children. And when they are speaking to other people, they know there are people who are not supportive of their community, who stand to gain monetarily and to gain social capital from defrauding and corruption against their community. So he knows exactly who he's talking to. We know who they're talking to. There are more dominoes to fall. And I think the students made it very clear that they're very much aware of that. This is not a one and done situation.
You know, Cory,
I'm gonna stop it right there. Because we're gonna really get into today's topic in regards to when we see stuff happening within our community. And I always talk about the advocacy work and the importance of making sure that not only are we speaking up and speaking out, but we're organizing and we're coming with a plan. And I think sometimes we might just throw stuff out, just see what sticks. But then there's also times when we really need to focus on ways to be intentional with our approach to address social justice challenges out there. So today's special guest is Cory McCarthy. He's executive director of school improvement with Everett Schools. Cory works to ensure students have access to a rigorous, high-quality, redesigned school model that will support academic success for all learners. All right, so without further ado, I would like to have you give us a warm welcome to Mr. Cory McCarthy. Oops. There we go. Had the wrong sound effects at first. Okay, Cory, welcome to the show.
Do not worry about it. I am Cory McCarthy. I am of the Providence Public Schools. I recently transitioned from Everett Public Schools to Providence Public Schools. I'm the executive director of school improvement. Sheldon and I, we had a great experience this spring with his sort of like equity roundtables. It's great to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. And think about it. You sent me the website, and I still read the wrong school. So thank you for correcting me on that.
No
now,
worries.
as I'm sorry.
No worries.
Oh, okay. Now, in your role as executive director of school improvement, what does that mean? Like, describe that position.
So when we're looking at school improvement, we're not what is unique about our department is that we're focused on not only the achievement gap, but what very rarely urban districts pay attention to is the opportunity gap.
Mm.
You know, do what are our children? What do they need? What resources do they need? What kind of high level access do they need? Do they need high quality exposure to culture? Do they need high impact STEM programming? Do they need early exposure to colleges and universities? Do they need a chance to really find their voice and to be for us to be on the other end and continue to answer the three times that kids ask you why, you must be able to answer them. And for us in school improvement, we are not just answering the bell in that area. We are creating school improvement plans. We are meeting with principals. We are meeting with vice principals. We're meeting with equity directors, DEI folks. We're meeting with politicians. We're meeting with community partners because schools and the school districts who are successful, if you look at suburban districts, they have all the resources because they have all the partners. There's a school district in Massachusetts who has a graphic design program, and they take care of all the T-shirts and all the logos and everything for the town. So, if you're looking at the city of Providence with all these partners and all these nonprofits and all this opportunity, why can't our kids be the ones leading the charge? And it starts with school improvement. It starts with how access to college, and it starts with that sort of like framing what is the vision for the birth through career for our students, namely Black and Brown students.
Okay, so tell me about your I guess Providence's demographics as far as Black and Brown. What do we look like?
Roughly 94% of the student population of 25,000 kids. I mean,
Okay.
it's diverse. You know, it's led by obviously the Latinx community and then the African American community. So it's ideal. You know, it's obviously my passion for turnaround is to really create these situations where these kids could excel and not and live a life where they feel like they could own the conversation and be valued as humans and thinkers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm excited about this because um I wanted to get your take on, you sent me this couple YouTube links a few months ago regarding some of the work that you were doing locally. And so I wanted to chat with you live about the work that you did and how that all came about. So I just played a little bit of the clip that you shared with me in the beginning of this live stream, but I'd love to kind of get your take on like what kind of led you to kind of want to do that kind of work.
Well, the video you played was a spot on the news because in my previous district, Everett, Massachusetts, we have a uber racist they have a uber racist mayor, um, and who has placed all of his cousins and all of his other um, sort of weak cronies in political positions that ultimately hurt Black and Brown children. So a couple of his cronies, one of which was his cousin, shared the Wheel of Fortune um, meme that had NI blank blank missing the two G's ERS. And this mayor tried to cover it up. This mayor and his cronies, the city councilmen, the school committee members who jumped on there, who he appointed. By the way, this mayor is also on the school committee, which is even more morally corrupt. So this particular mayor, he was really spreading his anti-blackness by using Black people, namely for votes, and the immigrant and Hispanic community by having these threats against them and their civil rights. And what we were able to do is my previous superintendent, Priyata Hiliani, she asked me if I could become the chief equity officer. And what I was able to do in that role and for all you folks out there who do the DEI work, is that do not take the job as a chief equity officer unless they give you some assurances around bottlenecking. And when I say bottlenecking, you're talking about hiring, right? That has to go. You want an equity lens, you put on your next pair of glasses, you get your 6 eyes. I'm talking hiring, I'm talking curriculum, I'm talking policies, I'm talking agendas. Everything must go through that. Even hiring from the custodian to the assistant superintendent, and those things are critical. HR director was a young woman of color. So in that particular town, they seen that so many people of color was in the superintendent's cabinet. They actually called the superintendent a racist. But what happened?
Because he had people of color?
100%. 100%.
So they said he was racist because...
Yes. So
that's crazy.
It's the funny thing is that it's just these are people who have a background where they are intellectuals, right? So like when it comes to racism and especially in education, anti-Blackness is at an all-time high. And so the targets became the Black people, right? So the Black people, and the critical piece that I want people to understand that, and I want people to hear very loud, and I'm very shameless when I say this, other races, they receive hate. I mean, they receive racism. Black people, the key with anti-Blackness is that we receive hatred, right? We receive hatred. And that's a different dynamic, right? Because no one is trying to, with some of the other races, no one is trying to withhold their right to be human from them. Historically, they did. Folks it's the same folks who have passed down their hatred to their nephews and nieces and their grandchildren, and that those are the same people who didn't want black kids to read. They're the same people who make fun of Black girls in their hair. They're the same people that are obsessed with giving permission to Black children in particular to be successful. So they can't be, so our kids essentially in sort of like those environments, they can't be successful unless they get the approval of these white politicians. So in response to that, we, they said this particular politician who shared the racist meme and the communications director for the mayor who were seen on Zoom talking about, hey, she'll bring one of her Black friends to something to qualify as diversity. So some of the students, the Black students, who I have the best thing about being a Black man and having Black culture and to be having my cultural competence is that people seem to think that white children do not benefit from this. They do immensely, right? But sort of dialing it back and talking about what the students were able to do, they just say, hey, Mr. McCarthy, like we're struggling with this, but our parents are scared. These people threaten our parents. They don't allow them to get contracts. They put stuff in their driveway. And, I said, well, you know what? Like we already, thankfully in the building, we already had a Black Studies course, and we had a history of hip hop course, and those are aligned because hip hop is part of civil rights in this story, and it really gave the students, and those educators gave the students they opened the door for them to really advocate, and we sat and the first conversation was about the historical context of NAACP. Mind you, I'm talking to sophomores and juniors, and then now hearing about the NAACP, and they're like, "What could we do?" I was like, "Hey, I'm not going to do it, but it's more powerful when you do it." And the most powerful tool for Black students right now is Black Twitter. Black Twitter will take you down. Black Twitter, it will, I mean, it hurts us sometimes, but it will crush the establishment. So students took to social media and they said, hey, we're going to do a walkout. Mind you, these two racists are still in their position. They're going to do a walkout. And, I think I said, hey, you know what? If you walk out, we will protect you. There's a couple of teachers, they're racist at home, but they're like, they're fine in school. So they were saying, hey, you shouldn't walk out. But you know what? The students were empowered because they were given their that sort of like affirmation, not the permission, right? We got to give our kids affirmation, not the permission.
Mhm.
Sort of like act upon how they're being treated because they always feel something. Our kids always feel something. Black, white, Latinx, it doesn't matter, Asian. So the kids came together. The first meeting we had 6 kids. The next meeting we had 15. And they planned, they got materials, they pulled it together. These 2 people are still in office. The Monday comes, they got a flyer out Sunday. I'm like, wow, this thing could be either a bust or this thing could turn out to be incredible.
Mm.
The next day, the day of the walkout, 1,700 students walked out of the building, lined the streets,
Wow.
went to City Hall. On their way down to City Hall, we got word that not only was that director let go, that communications director let go, but that city councilman who shared the memes resigned. And to put it into historical context, it is so hard to get one of these people to resign in Everett because that sort of like white supremacist culture is ingrained in their city. And I don't think any adult, what it did is it triggered the older adults who have tolerated that for years. I mean, these kids were in the streets. These kids were in City Hall chanting for hours. You know, white students were there. And, you know, white students with white parents who were upset that they were there. And the beauty of those Black students who initiated this speaks to the power of Black culture. Because no matter what happens with Black culture, that I wanted them to understand is that no matter what, everybody will follow. They will follow, right?
Yeah.
What ended up ultimately, we were able to solve a puzzle and create some momentum and empower the adults to now create a movement in Everett where everything is up for interrogation, and that's where we are. It was beautiful, and I didn't even participate. I was just sitting in a car in the back watching the children do the work because they deserved it. They asked for it. I didn't give them permission. I just got to be a fly on the wall of greatness.
Yeah, that's good, and I'm glad that you. Now, I've heard people say, you know, giving students voice. I'm like, the kids have voice already. Just allowing, you know, just empowering them or amplifying those voices, and I think that is the thing that we forget sometimes. What type of guidance? Because it sounds like the kids did most of the work, but did they come to you for anything? Like, what kind of guidance did you give them?
Well, I think so. Everybody wants student voice until the students start voicing it.
Mhm.
Right? But as far as guidance, they wanted to know how history fared, how history reacted to what they were about to do. So we talked about the civil rights movement. We talked about the bravery. We talked about Shirley Chisholm just being brave enough to wanting to run for president, right? But it was opening their eyes because seeing people be revolutionary and them having this entry point into the revolution, which is ongoing, help them muster the courage to do this. Because now once you believe in something, fear becomes absent. So so that guidance was just more around, hey, you get, as Black and brown students, you get an opportunity to make a poor decision. So if this is a poor decision, we're going to help you come back from it. And I think that's the beauty of it. We don't get, and that's the opportunity gap, right? We don't get opportunities to fail. I watch people fail up all the time. In education, don't let me get into anti-Blackness in education in itself. That's just a different bear that we all have to deal with right now. But our students, Black and brown students, they watch people fail up all the time, and this provided them an opportunity to gain ownership of a decision and then rebound and be even stronger.
Yeah, and I see there's a comment that just came in. Thank you for taking on this very important topic. It uses imperatives. I guess it's imperative that we facilitate such conversations to champion anti-racist instruction and social emotional practices. So thank you for that comment that came in. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this work is so important, and that's why I wanted to bring you on to talk about, some of the, and I really love that you're like, it's the kids. The kids really did the work. You were there as support. Were there any other adults that were helpful in this, or was it primarily you and your office? I mean,
Well,
what
it was
what was Mhm.
our superintendent. Is
Okay.
not the beauty of her work is that she stood with the kids. You know, I mean, these were people who constantly attacked me, and after a while, it just
Mhm.
there's nothing more dangerous than a black man who presents himself as having nothing to lose. Um, you
Mm.
can't jail him. You can't take away his literacy. You can't. He doesn't want to. He's not. His skin doesn't want the chains put back on him. So she
Yeah.
allowed me to sort of champion that for our community. But then
Mhm.
the people who were ready, right? We found that the town was ready for this. And if you can not empower, because empower, when you talk about empowering students, it's funny because it's a little bit like permission, right? Giving them permission. I don't want to
Yeah.
empower no
Yeah.
students. I don't want to give them
Yeah.
permission to do
Yeah.
anything. But what you want to do is guide, right? And you want to influence,
Mhm.
right? And you want to help them see their power, but they're most powerful when they're able to speak to their power. So when and once they recognize and feel and they're able to speak to what anti-blackness is, or even like how people there's a Latinx community, they experience it too, right? But the critical piece in education is around the historical context of what of black people dying over trying to build their own intelligence and self-efficacy. So yes, there were people involved, but ultimately, it just takes a different level of risk and I was willing to lose my job. And I'm willing to lose my job anywhere fighting for some kids. And anyone will tell you that because there were people who were 19, 17, and 18 years old ready to die over it in the 60s. And we don't have that I'm ready to risk it all type culture anymore. So hopefully this generation of students, they're able to see that. We was able to then weeks later take that same group of kids who initiated it to the Massachusetts um, Black Lawyers Association for Women, and they were able to speak to So now it's coming for full circle. Your advocacy meets that sort of high level, higher order of your trajectory. So now you're saying, hey, this is where my voice can take me. I'm amongst these amazing Black women lawyers, and that's what we have to do in our community. We have to connect dots. We have to take
Mhm.
the advocacy to another level. Because right now I'm seeing a lot of people benefit from the struggle, and Black people benefit from the struggles of our children. So when you're talking about advocacy, you got to be real. You got to keep it real. You got to be in spaces that you're not welcome. And teaching our kids that and having them sort of own that and help them rationalize that is our piece. We're like a biblical character with a big stick that's just guiding them, and that's where we are, but while maintaining
I like that.
that understanding that the role that anti-blackness is having in the lives of children right now.
Yeah, I like how you said what do you say the Bible character with the stick. That's funny.
We
And
just
I
got
like
the
how you
big stick.
described that. But
I mean, nobody in the Bible, and I read the Bible twice, front to back, and no one ever talked about those wise folks running.
yeah,
Everybody,
yeah, I like
we're the noun. Everybody else is the verb. Everybody's in action. We're just the constant. We're the noun. And I think we've
mm,
lost our way, right? But our students, and in this work, and now when I'm doing the school improvement piece in Providence Public Schools, now we're looking at areas and building out areas and understanding and supporting students in areas where the achievement gap misses. The achievement gap is really focused on
mhm,
testing and all this other school
Yeah.
stuff. All the other school, it's cool, right? I get it. This is how you get to a certain place for our kids. The opportunity gap is more through an equitable lens where students are able to receive, right? Receive the things and go on to college and say, hey, I got that. I experience, I experience having a celebrity on campus. I experienced, AP classes, and I'm doing a personal project on that. It's called the 610 Project. And in the 610 Project, I surveyed over 100 males of color. And I asked in the survey, I said to them, I have these sort of like 10 tenets, right? Which is the 10 piece out of the 610. And I asked them, how many of these tenets did you receive? Of all these 10 items, how many did you receive? Because the majority of them graduated from college. So all but 2 of these gentlemen received 6 or more of these items. And so one of them is like access to AP classes, visiting a college 3 times by the end of 3 different colleges by the end of sophomore year, having social emotional learning, whether it's a single activity or like something where you can reflect, having 3 or more Black teachers in your lives. So once we were able to populate the data, it came back that of all of the brothers who graduated from college, now get this, of all the brothers who graduated from college, they all received 6 or more of those sort of tenets, right?
Even having a Black teacher as well.
Yeah. So all of them except 2, and I was one of them, but I graduated. So it's one other guy. So my whole thing is like, hey, if we're going to build this out in school improvement, we want to make sure that all of our kids are getting these things. And that's something I can explain at another time as it builds out. So when we're talking opportunity gap and we're talking about not just anti-Blackness, we're shifting to like our likeness. What is the likeness? What does our likeness do for us? Right? Look at what the likeness of us has done in Hollywood. Look at how brave. Look at the cycle. Like Malcolm X is, yes, he's wonderful, but he got it from Garvey, and Garvey got it from some great men. And we are facing an interruption in that cycle of knowledge that could be passed on to our youth through advocacy, right? And I want to sort of restore that in my journey.
I hear you. And that's good. And I'm glad that you're interested in doing this kind of work. One of the things that I've heard you mention a couple of times, and it's a conversation that I've had a few times with some folks, is anti-Blackness. And I like how you kind of brought it into like, there's you mentioned something to the aspect of, other groups of color have faced racism.
Oh, they get racism. Yes, for sure. We understand that the Asian community, they're faced with a lot of hate. The Latinx community, they get it. They get it almost as much as we do because they're stereotyped. They get, but they're still, in many respects, are connected to a work ethic, right? Like part of stereotyping is Mexicans or Latinx diaspora is connected to some work ethic, right? You get to Black people, lazy, can't read, inarticulate, right? Big eaters, right? That's hatred. That's hatred. We get all of the deficit talk, right?
And those aren't even stereotypes, Cory. Like what you just mentioned, those weren't even like stereotypical stuff referred to. Like it's just straight up hatred, like you said.
It's straight up hatred, right? It is straight up hatred. So imagine a child. I had a friend of mine. She was so happy to put her son in a school that she had to pay $19,000 a year for. And she's like, I put in my son in this nice Montessori school. He's 2 years old. Blah blah blah. So I see her one day, and she's getting in an elevator, and she's like, "Hey," I was like, "Where are you going?" You look sad. And she's like, "Hey, I'm going. My son's schools call me, and they're saying that he's acting up. I was like, what do you mean acting up? And, he's yelling at the other kids and he's hitting the other kids. I was like, oh, you're going to a suspension hearing for a 2-year-old who's acting like a 2-year-old. And I said, you have to evaluate, like, your child, they don't like your black child. That's it.
Yeah.
Because they're embedding their hatred into and they're pushing it into the child. And then what does the child do? Because the dangerousness about that, right? What's dangerous about that is that human nature says you take that and you use that sort of hatred and turn it into being the bully and controlling the power dynamic. Big physical, big black man. How did that lazy kid turn into the big scary black man?
And he's 2 years old, and they're thinking about they were trying to suspend him.
They rationalize it to her in a way. The reason that she was able to understand it as such is because she already we're so indoctrinated in a sense, that we're so indoctrinated that she actually kind of believed that. Until I said to her, hey, this is a 2-year-old that's about to get sent home for being like a 2-year-old, for behaving like a 2-year-old. So terrible tools don't apply to black children because they're always either sexualized or they're being forced to be adults. And if we don't grab a hold of that and we don't have the right people in place to start talking and having these conversations and elevating our children in a way and guiding them and help them rationalize that that hate is being imposed upon them, they're going to naturally shift to where they can control the power dynamic, which is violence, sort of spitting out that hate or self-hatred. That's where it comes from. That's where it comes from.
Okay. I want to shift into I guess I kind of wanted to talk about thinking about, okay, so there's anti-Blackness, but let's shift over to what are some things that we can do to support our Black community. And you did mention that you teach a hip hop, or there is a hip hop ed course at the school. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what's the motivation behind that course?
So the history of hip hop was taught in my previous district, Everett Public Schools, and it was taught by outstanding educator Oswaldo Costanza. And when you hear the history of hip hop, people are thinking about, they tend to think about like who's the greatest rapper, right? But from when you're talking about like historical context and connecting hip hop to the civil rights movement and our own advocacy and this sort of like gifted talent around like the use of drums and to free us, right? To free to free our folks and help underline that freedom. It just gives you a different perspective, and the students who are able to get that opportunity to see like, hey, this is a space where we're able to talk freely, right? Despite what happens in hip hop, despite what happens in our music, the expression is there, right? And with that expression, behind the expression, it may be trauma, and behind some of the expression is pain, right? And there is a sort of like a highlighting, but like a very descriptive perspective on what poverty looks like. So if we can't go into Congress and talk about our trauma, we can't go in to City Hall and do it. We have to sort of spread that message to ourselves. And historically, that's what we've done. Like there was braids in the hair of young women to tell people to identify with someone who wanted to free themselves. So that sort of context was embedded in the course. Shout out to Mr. Costanza, and it really just comes down to who you put in front of our kids. Another thing that we were able to do is to have a Black Studies course, and we made it an honors course. You don't do, for the audience out there, don't do a Black. It's not an elective. It's an honors class, right? Or better.
Yeah, I like that.
And the reason you put that value point and that emphasis on it is because of the role historically that people of color, namely Black people, has played in the construct of this country, the very country that. So a lot of times schools spend time erasing people of color from the history, and courses like Black Studies, the history of hip hop, infuses us into the context. Like kids start saying to themselves, hey, they start watching cartoons, and you're like, hey, where's the Black person here? you know,
Mhm.
And I think that's just a critical piece for the students to sort of like gain that level of confidence and self-identify with the real world.
So you make it's an honors course for both courses are honors or
No,
just
the
to be
the
clear?
Black Studies course was an honors course, and as a
Okay.
as a
Yeah,
part of our,
I've seen some.
they call it ethnic studies in
Go
other
ahead.
districts. They call it ethnic studies in other
Mhm.
districts. Um, we were very intentional with calling it Black Studies. There's another school in Boston. They have
Yeah,
another.
and I'm glad you do that because yeah, some schools will just do an ethnic studies and they just kind of lump everything in one course. So you have some Latinx stuff, you'll have some Asian stuff, you'll have the indigenous. So everybody's kind of wrapped into one. But you have an intentional course where it's, this is Black Studies. It's going to be about Black diaspora as opposed to just everybody's culture and ethnicity and all that stuff being put into one course. So I've seen some schools have ethnic studies or Black studies, and having those as mandatory courses and not as an elective, just so that way because they recognize that all your students will benefit from learning about cultures in general, but definitely learning about Black culture, I think is important as well. Um, is is there a reason why it wasn't made mandatory versus being an honors course?
No, I think that sort of onboarding, that entry point, they needed an entry point. Um, you know,
Mhm.
I think with the historical context of the city, and Black folks generally not feeling comfortable in the city, unless they play the sport. I think they needed that, right? I think they needed that sort of entry point. Um, I think moving forward, though, we will build. I'm not there anymore, but I know they will build upon it because the kids are very loud about what they need, and they were giving an avenue, a voice to do that. And that is very critical because now they understand where their power lies. Now like something happens in the town. I'm not there anymore. Something happens in the town. People call me like, "Hey, can you get the kids?"
Mhm.
The kids are the most powerful tool. They can hire and fire anyone. Parents could hire and fire anyone. And
Yeah.
and there's a reason why some some schools and districts with, withhold parent involvement unless the student's acting up or whatever, right?
Mm.
You can hire and fire
Mhm.
people with the voice of children who are dissatisfied with and I would love to be in that court as well. Like I'm not exempt from that. Fire me if I'm not delivering what I'm supposed to be doing for our students because they are the centerpiece. They are our access of what we do. So I think that's where some districts struggle. I love the fact that Providence is a challenging district, but my gosh, you are seeing. I've run into so many BIPOC educators and people who are ready to take that next step. And
Mhm.
I think with shows like yours and putting them on, and because that's culturally that's what we do. We put each other on, right?
Yeah.
And putting each
Yeah.
other on to this sort of movement of like, hey, like we need to tap into high wages, right? Um, high impact, high wages. We need to go to college because we want to be able to quit jobs, right? We want to be able to say, hey, I don't like this job. I'm
Yeah.
educated. I could get another one, right?
Mm.
And we want to give our kids options, right?
Mm.
The power to respond to failure. So,
Yep.
and that's where we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if we have some folks that are like maybe in DEI positions at their school or their district, and they're listening to their students, because I mean, you were in some of the mastermind sessions that we had. where we had some DEI folks that were just like, man, I'm hitting walls. Like no matter what I do, they don't listen to me. And then we talked about, getting your students involved. If you have some word of advice that you wanted to share with other DEI folks that are, again, feeling like they're hitting walls, what kind of thoughts would you have as far as kind of helping them getting students more involved with some of the actionable steps?
Shout out to the Massachusetts DEI group. There's a DEI group in Massachusetts, about 30 members. They meet monthly. I would love to have you speak to them. So that's like, it's less of a therapy. Every time to see people of color come together, they think it's therapy. It's not really therapy. It's a professional learning community.
Mhm.
However, so there's 3 pieces of advice. All right. You know what's coming. So
I'm
number 1, don't take the job if you have not met with the superintendent, because the DEI work is so important. The superintendent, you have to interview the superintendent to see if that person is ready to receive you. Right? I'll repeat that. You must interview the superintendent to see if that person is ready to receive you in your work. Otherwise, you shouldn't take the job. Right?
Mhm.
Number 2, make sure that the job requires that you're involved in the hiring process. If you're involved, because you need to make sure HR is ready to ask critical questions to people who are about their readiness to teach Black and brown kids, right? Because teaching is not a hobby, right? You're saving the lives of children. So one question that we came up with, I think needs to be in every single interview process, and as the former chief equity officer, this question was most critical. Tell me a time, interviewing anyone, tell us a time where you advocated for BIPOC students or historically marginalized students. And some people will stutter, some people will flow. If you cannot name a time that you have, you probably shouldn't be working with our kids, right? So that's getting involved in the hiring process is number 2. Okay. Number 3 is although you are facilitating your programming, although you are pushing and pulling out opportunities to really build this equity lens, you constantly remind people that as a person of color, because usually in these positions it's people of color, I have been the victim. So keep in mind, I'm doing you a favor because I am the person, I am not benefiting from this, right? I am
Mhm.
sort of helping you with this paradigm shift that you're trying to go on, and understand that I'm doing this work with the understanding that I am the victim functioning as someone who is trying to create a solution, where it's ultimately not the job of black and brown people to sort of change the minds of white folks who have sort of like this sort of like consciousness of anti-blackness and dislike and racism towards other BIPOC races. And that's a very critical piece. I know it's a job, cool, but if you do not understand or really like think about those 3 things, and your superintendent or whoever's not willing to advocate for you, you are going to hate your job. You're going to start doubting yourself. You're going to wonder if you took on that loan and got that master's for nothing.
Yeah.
Or if you're in this doctoral program for nothing, because folks are not valuing you as a human being. So yeah, that's my advice.
I like those. You got to meet with the superintendent, and you need to be interviewing the superintendent because you definitely want the support.
Mhm.
You need to make sure that you have hiring authority, and that's one of the things I talked to plenty of folks that are in DEI positions, and it's like we don't have any hiring or firing authority, so it's like we can highly encourage teachers to do stuff, but I can't make them do it
And
because
that's
I don't have that title of authority.
and if I'm not to cut you off, but think about it. That is the make or break. That's when you know if the position is symbolic and performative.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the key. So, your next great book, which I bought one, shameless plug for my dude, right? Your next great book, folks need steps. We got to start
Yeah.
giving, because the role is growing. Every city now has one.
Mhm.
I've seen cities who started the jobs for DEI directors at $60,000, and when they became too empowered, they doubled their salary so they could go away, so they could function how they want to. That's not how it goes.
Mhm.
There's a perception that we could be
Yeah.
bought and sold. So I think that the path to sort of that collective efficacy around like building equity lenses and seeing our children and their trajectory as the most important piece is built within how districts value that DEI position. Because the DEI position is temporary. You want to know why it's temporary? Because if it's done right, you don't need to exist there anymore. Just like school improvement. Just like school improvement. I tell people all the time, I'm going to improve these schools, but it's my job to fire myself. Because if everybody's rocking and rolling, I don't need to be here. And I think that's the mindset that I want people to understand. It's a war on our children out here, and I want people to understand that they're a couple of degrees away from it. It's not, if you put black children and children of color in suburban schools, how are they going to deal with the inherent racism of other people who don't know or think they're being racist, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's where we are, man.
So I agree with all your points. The only thing that I would add to your list is I would want to, if I'm getting into one of these DEI positions, I would want to be on a team or have a team.
Yes.
One, for a couple reasons. One, I don't, even though I'm black, and I represent, I'm a black male. And so there's challenges within, I'm going to have black male students, but I'm also going to have other students with identities that I don't represent. And so I would like to have a team that, again, there's representation within that team. And again, if you're one person over a whole district and literally everything that has to do with equity gets sent your way, and it's DEI, so let's just say diversity, equity, and inclusion issues all come your way, for one person, I think is a lot. So I would add having a team. And then the last one that I would add to that list is making sure you have a budget as well. A lot of folks will be put in these positions and have absolutely no money for PDs or any type of funding, any type of work. There's no real money there. Again, is this a placeholder position, or is this a position where we're actually wanting some things to change?
Right. I agree with you. I was having a team is a sensitive topic for me because I believe that it was the direction that I wanted to take in my previous job of getting a team instead of me just being this wrecking ball.
Mhm.
They didn't feel like it was the right time, and I felt like it was the right exit time because I was like, okay, all right. So we need that appetite, right? You have to have the appetite for equity, and it evolves, right? So maybe we can talk about that roadmap for DEI folks, right? And we got to shift DEI to Jedi, and I didn't make this up. I didn't make Jedi up myself. I seen it somewhere. It was justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. So now we just got to get our Jedi warriors together, right? And then start like building roadmaps because it's not only about race, right? But the thing is that people have hated black people for so long, we could relate to every single source of injustice. So I and advocating for women, advocating for the LGBTQ and trans community, like advocating for them as themselves, right? And no matter how you're feeling, like and not having passing judgment, right? The ultimate judgment-free zone should live within that Jedi community, while helping people, like helping white folks rationalize their allies, like being allies, right? Like you cannot. The work is hard enough. We need good allies, but we got to be able to vet them properly. Let's be honest. Like they got to do the consciousness work.
Mm.
They got to. I mean, like at the end of the day, there's nothing I could do as a black man to change the dynamics of a white person's. They could do that to me. So
Yeah.
it was just crazy. It sounds nuts, but it's true. Like I can't. If people are like, sometimes when I'm in these circles and white folks are like, yo, it'll make it so hard, I'll lose friends. Okay. Because I'm willing to lose friends for anybody else, right? But you still get to get that job.
Yeah.
There's somebody in Lindsey Graham state, well, they'll still hire you. You know, as a black man, I only get one error, man. So like, you gotta take your allyism seriously if you want to join this fight. If you want to do what you say you're gonna do, right? Or act on what you really believe and evaluate your sort of consciousness every morning. Like, hey, I'm a fierce advocate for these students. And my advocacy is not rigor is not absent in my advocacy, and you're cool because you don't want to teeter on the line of feeling sorry for them.
Okay. Yeah, Cory, you always bring the fire every time, and I love talking to you because every time I talk to you, I learn something from you, and I definitely appreciate the work that you're doing.
Same here,
Why don't you close us out with? I appreciate that. Why don't you close us out with a final word of your last comments for the show?
When you are in the work of like liberating students, right, and liberating people, it is the hardest thing you have to help students along this journey and not try to be their leader. You want to guide them because not all their circumstances are the same, but they always feel different levels of hate, and hate is hate. So when you're doing this justice and this liberation work, you always have to check yourself every day. If you're supposed to meet with students and you're 3 minutes late and you want to stop at that Dunkin' Donuts, don't do it. Show up on time. Because one thing students will do is that they'll always hold you accountable to everything you say. If you're a white person watching this, one of the strategies I like, have a conversation with your students and try to humanize yourself. If you're a teacher watching this, I think what you should do is to really talk about your greatest successes and your greatest failures, because teachers and educators are superheroes to kids, but the comics don't start selling until they found out that Superman found kryptonite and how it weakened him. So now the students, if you want to talk higher order, it ain't just the Superman that could move planets. It's Superman that, yes, I'm the strongest person here, but I have my weaknesses. And that sort of gap in the vulnerability could really help you with your students. And finally, like, if you every day I look at this Marvel, I pull up the picture of this Marvel universe, and I and I look at the people in the back. The people in the back are there are students, right? The people in the front are students. They're all just people they're different people with different superpowers. And Daredevil is blind, but gosh, Daredevil can do everything else. Yeah. So just because they have for every disability a student has, their ability is what we have to help them rationalize and really reconcile. So stay tough, stay strong, be firm advocates, take risks, right? And because that is your freedom, right? And that is your freedom, and there's nothing greater than for us on this earth to really free children, because they're born into a state of oppression.
Oh yeah. Thank you for that. If we have some folks that want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach you online?
You could contact me. I usually give the whole community my phone number, because if I get prank call, I think it's pretty funny. But you can contact me at at Coach Cory McCarthy. You know, I used to do the basketball thing. CoachCory, no E, MCCARTHY, Coach Cory McCarthy at gmail.com. I will reply. I will kick it with you. This work is too heavy for us to go about it alone. And I appreciate you having me on, man. It's I'm a little bit giddy. I'm like, I got the celebrity look now. I got my man Sheldon on here.
Oh my God.
Let me get that
Not-
shirt.
I appreciate you, man. I really do. I appreciate your time and for again bringing this insight and so much knowledge. So it's an honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Free to real.
All right. Well, again, I'm going to drop you down there, Cory. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again. All right, folks. That was Cory McCarthy. Always brings a fire every time I talk to him. So as we wrap things up, as always, if you have enjoyed this content, I would appreciate a follow. Smash that like button. Subscribe button, whatever. The YouTube thing. Hit the YouTube, subscribe, hit that bell as well, so that way you get notified each time a new episode comes out. We go live every Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Again, please feel free to share with your colleagues, those who could benefit from this show as well. One of the key takeaways from the conversation I had with Cory was, just the idea of just letting or having students, giving them that I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it, because I don't want to say giving voice, but just more listening to your students and amplifying their voices. He shared with us, his role in organizing this protest, this walkout, the school walkout. He didn't do as much. The students did a lot of the work, and he was there as support. And I think that's what we need. Our kids need to know that there's an adult who has their back, and giving them those opportunities to lead change, I think is really good as we're thinking about the future folks that are going to be coming out. So, given that experience, I think is really important. If you are interested in getting a position in the DEI field, diversity, equity, inclusion, make sure that you're meeting with the superintendent and asking them questions to see where their value is, where they're at. Make sure that you have some hiring and firing authority, power. You're on those panels for positions. Make sure you have a team, budget, those type of things, and then operating from a position of, yes, I'm doing this work to support a lot of the lived experiences that maybe I've had, and also want to support the community as well. Those are some of the takeaways from today's conversation. Remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Let's continue to be a voice leading equity.